In the midst of a violent storm, a millionaire crosses a bridge when he spots something disturbing. A child tied up, on the verge of being swept away by the current. His instinct tells him to move on, but something makes him stop. As he frees, a chilling whisper cuts through the air. "Mommy said the man on the bridge would take me." Without realizing it, he has just plunged into a dark mystery. But before I tell you this story, subscribe to the channel for more videos like this. The windshield wipers fought a losing battle against the deluge as Seraphim Allard's Mercedes crawled across the old riverside bridge. Lightning illuminated the steel girders in harsh bursts, transforming them into skeletal fingers reaching through the darkness. He should have taken the highway, but construction had forced him onto this godforsaken detour. Another crack of thunder made the bridge shudder, and Seraphim tightened his grip on the steering wheel, his knuckles white against the leather. At T52, he had built an empire through calculated decisions and an unwavering focus on the bottom line. Sentiment was a luxury he had long ago discarded, like an ill-fitting suit. Tonight's board meeting had proven that yet again, 300 jobs eliminated with a single signature, another company gutted and restructured for maximum profit. The shareholders would be pleased. The rain intensified, drumming against the roof like angry fists. Seraphim squinted through the glass, his steel-gray eyes searching for the road's edge. Another flash of lightning, and that's when he saw it. A splash of color against the bridge's dark metal framework. He blinked, certain his mind was playing tricks on him, but there it was again, something small and pink, barely visible through the curtain of rain. His foot eased off the accelerator. The rational part of his brain, the part that had made him millions, told him to keep driving. Whatever it wasn't his concern. He had a late dinner reservation at the Capitol Grill where he would celebrate another successful acquisition, with a perfectly aged bourbon and an overpriced steak. But something else, something buried so deep he'd forgotten its existence, made him pull over. The hazard lights cast an eerie orange glow through the rain as he grabbed his umbrella and stepped out into the storm. The wind nearly ripped the umbrella from his grasp as he made his way toward that incongruous splash of pink. His Italian leather shoes slipped on the wet concrete as he approached the bridge's edge. Lightning flashed again and his heart stuttered in his chest. There, tied to one of the support beams with crude rope, was a child, a little girl in a rain-soaked pink dress, her dark hair plastered to her face, her skin almost blue from the cold. She couldn't have been more than 5 years old. "Dear God," he whispered, the words lost in the howling wind. He dropped his umbrella and rushed forward, his hands shaking as he reached for the ropes. The girl's eyes snapped open, large dark eyes that seemed to swallow the darkness around them. She didn't cry out or struggle. She simply stared at him, unblinking as if she had been expecting him. "Mammy said the bridge man would take me," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the storm. Seraphim's fingers fumbled with the knots, his mind racing. Who would do this? The ropes were tied tight, professional knots that bit into her small wrists. When he finally freed her, she didn't move, hanging limply in his arms like a broken doll. Her skin was ice cold against his. As he lifted her, the sleeve of her dress rode up, revealing dark bruises that mottled her arm like spilled ink. Similar marks peeked out from beneath her collar. Seraphim felt something he hadn't experienced in decades, pure, unadulterated rage. He carried her back to his car, shielding her from the rain with his jacket. His mind was already calculating the next steps. Hospital, police, child services. Simple, logical solutions. But when he opened the car door and tried to set her down, her tiny fingers clutched his shirt with surprising strength. "Please," she whispered, "don't let them find me." Thunder crashed overhead, and in that moment Seraphim Allard made a decision that would shatter his carefully constructed world. He placed her in the passenger seat, buckled her in, and turned the car around. The hospital would ask questions. The police would get involved. And something in those haunted eyes told him that would be a death sentence for this child. As they drove away from the bridge, the girl's eyes began to drift closed, exhaustion finally claiming her. Just before she succumbed to sleep, she murmured something that made his blood run cold. "They said no one would look for me here." Seraphim pressed harder on the accelerator, leaving the bridge behind. In the rearview mirror, lightning illuminated the structure one last time, and for a moment it looked like a giant mouth waiting to swallow them both whole. The grandfather clock in Seraphim's study struck midnight, its deep chimes echoing through the empty halls of his Georgian mansion. The girl, who had finally whispered her name, Niva, lay curled up on his imported leather sofa, wrapped in one of his cashmere throws. She hadn't spoken another word since they arrived, just watched him with those unnervingly steady eyes. Seraphim stood by the window, phone in hand, thumb hovering over his lawyer's number. The logical course of action was clear. Call Harrison. Let him handle this mess through proper channels. That's what he paid the man 7 figures a year for. But something made him hesitate. A small whimper drew his attention. Niva was trembling in her sleep, her tiny fingers clutching the blanket so tightly her knuckles had gone white. The bruises on her arms stood out starkly against her pale skin, telling a story he wasn't sure he wanted to read. His housekeeper, Mrs. Chen, appeared in the doorway with a tray of hot chocolate and cookies. She'd been with him for 15 years and had never once questioned his decisions until tonight. "Sir," she said softly, setting down the tray, "the child needs proper care, a doctor at least." "I know what she needs," he snapped, then immediately regretted his tone. Mrs. Chen had practically raised his sister's children when Sarah had fallen ill. If anyone understood the complexities of caring for a traumatized child, it was her. "Her? Clothes are still wet?" Mrs. Chen continued, unfazed by his outburst. "I can run a warm bath, find something for her to wear." Seraphim nodded, grateful for her practical approach. As she left, he turned back to the window, watching rain stream down the glass. What was he doing? He had board meetings tomorrow, contracts to review, a company to run. He couldn't play savior to some abandoned child. A flash of lightning illuminated the garden, and for a moment he saw his reflection in the window, grey hair at his temples, lines etched deep around his mouth from years of frowning. When had he become this man? This cold, calculating figure who measured everything in profit margins and stock points. Behind him, Niva stirred. "The bad people," she mumbled in her sleep. "They're coming back." Seraphim turned, studying her small form. In sleep, her face had lost its guarded expression, revealing the child she should have been, innocent, vulnerable. Another crack of thunder made her flinch, and without thinking, he moved closer, adjusting the blanket around her shoulders. His phone buzzed, a text from Harrison. "Missed dinner. Everything okay?" As he started to reply, Niva's eyes flew open, wide with terror. She scrambled backward on the sofa, pressing herself against the cushions. "No phones," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "They find people with phones." Seraphim slowly set the device down. "Who finds people, Niva?" She shook her head violently, dark hair flying. "Can't say. They hurt Mommy when I say." A chill ran down his spine. Before he could press further, Mrs. Chen returned with a stack of children's clothes. "My granddaughter left these last visit," she explained. "They might be a bit big, but they're warm." Niva's eyes darted between them, calculating, assessing, expressions no child should know how to make. When Mrs. Chen stepped forward with the clothes, she shrank back further. "It's all right," Seraphim found himself saying, his voice gentler than he'd heard it in years. "Mrs. Chen is safe. She makes the best hot chocolate in Boston." The girls. Gaze fixed on the steaming mug on the tray, then back to him. Slowly, like a wounded animal approaching food, she uncurled herself. Mrs. Chen didn't move, just waited patiently as Niva inched forward. "Would you like to get warm and dry?" Mrs. Chen asked softly. "There's a big bathtub with bubbles if you'd like." Niva looked at Seraphim again, seeking permission, reassurance. He nodded, and something in his chest tightened when she slipped her tiny hand into Mrs. Chen's. As they left the room, his phone buzzed again. "Harrison, sources say Palmer tech deal might be shaky. Need to discuss ASAP." Seraphim stared at the message, his mind already spinning through implications, contingencies, damage control. This was his world. Deals, negotiations, power plays, not rescued children and midnight storms. Then he heard it, A small broken sound from upstairs that might have been a laugh or a sob. He couldn't tell which, but it cut through his defenses like a knife through butter. The Palmer tech deal could wait. First, he needed to understand why someone had left a 5-year-old girl to die on a bridge, and why she was so terrified of being found. His security system chimed, motion detected at the front gate. Seraphim moved to the monitor, watching as a black SUV with tinted windows drove slowly past his entrance, then continued down the street. Probably nothing, but he found himself double-checking the alarm settings anyway. Upstairs, Niva screamed. Seraphim took the stairs 2 at a time, his heart pounding. The scream had come from the guest bathroom, where the door stood slightly ajar. Steam billowing out. Mrs. Chen was speaking in soft, soothing tones, but Niva's sobs cut through her words like shards of glass. He hesitated at the doorway. "Mrs. Chen?" "It's the water, sir," she answered, her voice tight with concern. She saw her reflection and... Another sob from Niva. "The mark. They'll know. They'll find me." Seraphim pushed the door open wider. Niva sat huddled in the corner, still fully dressed in her wet clothes, her arms wrapped tightly around herself. Mrs. Chen knelt beside her, a fluffy towel held uselessly in her hands. But what caught Seraphim's attention was the mirror, or rather what he saw in it. As Niva moved, the wet fabric of her dress shifted, revealing something on the back of her neck. A small mark, dark against her pale skin, partially hidden by her hair. Not a bruise, but something deliberate. A symbol. "Can I see?" he asked, keeping his voice neutral, non-threatening. When she shook her head violently, he tried a different approach. "I have a mark too, you know. Right here." He rolled up his sleeve, revealing a small scar on his forearm. "Got it when I was about your age, falling out of a tree I wasn't supposed to climb." Niva's sobs quieted slightly. She studied his scar with those 2 old eyes of hers. After a long moment, she turned slightly, lifting her hair with trembling fingers. The mark was small, no larger than a quarter, but precisely drawn, a series of interconnected lines forming what looked like a stylized butterfly, or perhaps a flower. The skin around it was raised and red as if it were recent. "Does it hurt?" he asked. She shook her head. "Not anymore. Mommy put ice on it after..." She stopped abruptly, terror flooding back into her eyes. Mrs. Chen touched Seraphim's arm gently. "Sir, perhaps we should let her rest. The bath can wait." But Seraphim couldn't let it go. Not now. "After what, Niva? What did your mother do?" "She cried," Niva whispered. "She cried and said she was sorry and that she had to hide me where they wouldn't look. She said..." Her voice cracked. "She said sometimes mommies have to do hard things to keep their babies safe." The pieces were starting to form a picture Seraphim didn't like. "Where is your mother now?" "The bad man took her, after she dropped me off at the bridge. She told me to be quiet and stay still and that someone would find me." A single tear rolled down her cheek. She promised she'd come back. Mrs. Chen made a small sound of distress. Seraphim felt something hard and cold settle in his stomach. Someone had marked this child, threatened her mother, forced her into an impossible choice, and now that mother was missing. His phone buzzed, in his pocket. Niva flinched at the sound, pressing herself further into the corner. He silenced it without looking. "Nieva," he said carefully, "did your mother ever mention any names? The bad man. Did she ever say who he was?" She shook her head, but her hand drifted unconsciously to her neck, to the mark. "Just that he was important, that he had lots of friends who could find us anywhere." Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. "That's why she had to make me disappear." A distant roll of thunder made her jump. Mrs. Chen wrapped the towel around her shoulders and... This time Niva didn't pull away. "You're safe here," the housekeeper murmured. "No one will hurt you." But even as Mrs. Chen spoke the words, Seraphim wasn't so sure. The black SUV at his gate, the precise professional knots that had bound her to the bridge, the calculated mark on her neck. This wasn't some random act of cruelty. This was methodical, planned. His phone buzzed again. A different pattern this time, his private line. Only 5 people had that number. The display showed unknown. He stepped into the hallway to answer it, but before he could speak, a voice cut through the line, distorted, mechanical. "The girl doesn't belong to you, Mr. Allard. Walk away now while you still can." The line went dead. Inside the bathroom, Neva had begun to sing softly to herself, an eerie lullaby that made the hair on the back of his neck stand up. "Ring around the butterfly, secrets that we can't deny. When the darkness comes to play, butterfly must fly away." Seraphim's security system chimed again. This time, multiple vehicles were approaching his gate. Seraphim's security monitors showed 3 black SUVs now, identical to the one that had passed earlier. They formed a triangle around his front gate, engines idling, headlights cutting through the rain. He watched them from his study, mind racing through options. His finger hovered over the direct line to his head of security, but the anonymous caller's words echoed in his mind. 5 people had his private number. Someone had given him up. Who could he trust? "Mrs. Chen," he called softly. She appeared in the doorway, Neva's small hand clutched in hers. The girl had finally changed into dry clothes, a pair of pink pajamas that hung loose on her thin frame. "Take her to the wine cellar. Use the service stairs." Mrs. Chen's eyes widened slightly, but she nodded. She had worked for him long enough to understand. The wine cellar had a hidden room, a remnant from Prohibition days that he'd maintained as a secure space for sensitive business documents. As they turned to go, Neva broke free and ran to him. Her arms wrapped around his legs, face pressing into his knee. The gesture was so unexpected, so foreign to his world of handshakes and business contracts, that for a moment he didn't know how to respond. "Don't let them take me," she whispered, against his pants leg. "Please." Seraphim felt something shift inside him, like a key turning in a long rusted lock. He knelt down, meeting her eyes. "No one is taking you anywhere, I promise." The words surprised him as much as they seemed to comfort her. When was the last time he had made a promise based on emotion rather than calculation? After Mrs. Chen led Neva away, Seraphim moved quickly. He accessed his computer, initiating emergency protocols he had never expected to use. Years of paranoid preparation, encrypted files, offshore accounts, escape routes, suddenly seemed less excessive. His phone rang again. This time, the display showed Harrison McDonald, his lawyer, his friend, or so he had thought. He let it ring. The security feed showed movement at the gate. A man in an expensive suit stepped out of the lead SUV, holding up what looked like a badge. Private security, not law enforcement. Behind him, 4 more men emerged from the other vehicles, their stances professional, practiced. Seraphim's intercom buzzed. "Good evening, Mr. Allard." The voice was smooth, cultured. "I apologize for the late hour, but we need to discuss the child you picked up earlier this evening. I represent certain parties who are very concerned about her welfare." Seraphim pressed the intercom button. "It's midnight. Any legitimate concerns can be addressed through proper channels during business hours." A soft chuckle. "Mr. Allard, I don't think you understand the situation. The girl's mother is quite distraught. She's authorized us to retrieve her daughter. By any means necessary." The lie was smooth, practiced. Seraphim thought of Neva's bruises, the mark on her neck, her mother's desperate attempt to hide her. If that's true, she can come herself, in daylight, with proper documentation. "Unfortunately, that won't be possible." The man's voice hardened. "The mother is indisposed, but we have full authority to act on her behalf. Please don't make this more difficult than it needs to be." Lightning flashed, illuminating the men's faces through the rain. They were spreading out now, taking positions around the perimeter of his property. Professional, military trained, if he had to guess. "I'll need to verify your credentials." Seraphim stalled, watching his security feeds. "My lawyer will contact Harrison McDonald." The man cut him off. "I believe he's already been briefed on the situation. In fact, he strongly advised cooperation, for everyone's sake." The betrayal stung, but it wasn't entirely surprising. Harrison had always followed the money, and whoever these people were, they clearly had plenty of it. A notification popped up on Seraphim's computer. His emergency protocols were complete. Assets secured, digital trails obscured. But what good was protecting his wealth if he couldn't protect one small girl? The intercom crackled again. One last chance, Mr. Allard. The child now, and this all goes away. Your business interests remain untouched. Your reputation intact. A simple transaction. Seraphim's finger hesitated over the response button. 15 years ago, hell, 15 hours ago, he would have taken the deal. Clean, efficient, profitable. The logical choice. But then he heard it, drifting up from below, faint but clear. Naiva's voice singing that eerie lullaby again. Ring around the butterfly, secrets that we can't deny. He thought of her eyes, full of terror and trust, of her tiny arms around his legs, of the promise he had made, the first real promise he had made in decades. His security system chimed again, more vehicles approaching. Larger ones this time. These people, whoever they were, weren't leaving without the girl, unless... Seraphim pressed the intercom. Give me 10 minutes to gather her things, then you can have her. A wise decision, the man replied. 10 minutes. Seraphim was already moving, his mind shifting into the cold analytical state that had made him millions. They thought they had won, thought they were dealing with a businessman who would always choose profit over principle. They didn't know that sometimes the most devastating moves in business came disguised as surrender. He reached for his phone, dialing a number he had sworn never to use again. It rang once before a gruff voice answered. "Hello, brother," Seraphim said softly. "I need your help." Marcus Allard had left the family business 15 years ago after a bitter falling out with his brother. While Seraphim had chosen the path of corporate empires and billion-dollar deals, Marcus had walked away from it all to become a small-town mechanic in western Massachusetts. They hadn't spoken since their mother's funeral 5 years ago. 7 minutes left, Mr. Allard, the cultured voice came through the intercom, interrupting Seraphim's thoughts. "The girl," Marcus said through the phone, his voice hard. "You're sure about this?" Seraphim moved silently through the darkened house, gathering essential items. "She has a mark, Marcus, like Sarah's." The silence on the other end was deafening. Their sister Sarah had died young. Her death ruled a suicide. But before the end, she had drawn something over and over, a symbol that looked disturbingly like the mark on Naiva's neck. "I'll be there in 4 hours, Marcus finally said. "I need you at the cabin, the old one, by Miller's Lake." Seraphim checked his watch. 6 minutes. "And Marcus, bring your tools, the ones from before." A sharp intake of breath. "You're going to make them hurt." "They marked a child." Seraphim's voice was ice. "They threatened her mother, and now they're at my gate thinking they can buy me off like some common stockholder." "Just like old times," Marcus said, and Seraphim could hear the grim smile in his voice. "The brothers Allard taking on the world. The 5 minutes, Mr. Allard." The intercom crackled. Seraphim ended the call and slipped the phone into his pocket. He made his way down to the wine cellar where Mrs. Chen sat with Neva in the hidden room. The girl was curled up in a ball, clutching one of his old cashmere sweaters like a security blanket. "Change of plans," he said softly. "We're going on a trip." Mrs. Chen's eyes narrowed. "The men outside will be very disappointed." He knelt beside Naiva. "Do you trust me?" She studied him with those ancient eyes of hers. "You promised." "I did. And I'm going to keep that promise." He held out his hand. "But we have to be very quiet and very brave. Can you do that?" She nodded solemnly, placing her tiny hand in his. The gesture made his throat tight. "Mrs. Chen, take my car and drive to your daughter's house in Providence. Don't stop, don't call anyone. I'll contact you when it's safe." His housekeeper hesitated only a moment before nodding. She had seen enough in her years of service to know when questions would be useless. 3 minutes, Mr. Allard. Perhaps we should come inside and help you pack." Seraphim led Neva through the wine cellar to a door that looked like part of the wall. Behind it lay a narrow tunnel, a relic from the house's prohibition days that led to the boathouse by the river. He had maintained it over the years, telling himself it was just good business to have an escape route, As they moved through the darkness, Neva's hand tightened in his. She didn't cry or complain, just followed with that eerie silence that spoke of too much practice at being invisible. 1 minute, Mr. Allard. They reached the boathouse just as the sound of breaking glass echoed from the main house. They were coming in. Seraphim helped Neva into the small electric boat he kept there, silent, perfect for late-night fishing trips he had never actually taken. As they slipped out onto the dark river, rain still falling in sheets, he heard the faint sound of his front door being breached. By the time they realized their mistake, he and Neva would be long gone. Ring around the butterfly, Neva whispered suddenly, making him jump. Secrets that we can't deny. What does that mean? He asked, steering the boat through the darkness. That song? Mommy taught it to me, she said. Neva's voice caught. She said if I ever saw the butterfly people, I should sing it in my head and remember that she loves me. Butterfly people. The symbol on her neck. Sarah's drawings. It couldn't be coincidence. Mr. Allard. The voice over his house's external speakers was no longer smooth and cultured. This is a serious mistake. But Seraphim wasn't listening. He was watching Naeva, who had gone rigid in her seat. In the distance, a high-pitched sound cut through the rain. Not quite a whistle, not quite a hum. The girl's eyes went wide with terror. No, she whimpered. Not the butterfly song, please, not the butterfly song. And then she began to scream. The high-pitched sound grew louder, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Neva's screams had turned to whimpers as she pressed her hands against her ears, rocking back and forth in the boat's narrow seat. Seraphim cut the engine, letting them drift in the current as he tried to think. The sound was doing something to her. Her eyes had gone glassy, unfocused, like she was slipping away into some other place, just like Sarah had, for those final days. Neva, he said firmly, taking her small shoulders in his hands. Look at me. Stay with me. They're calling, she whispered, her voice distant. The butterfly people are calling. Have to go back. Have to... No. He pulled her close, wrapping his coat around her shivering form. Focus on my voice. Tell me about your mother. What's her name? The question seemed to anchor her slightly. Elena, she murmured. Elena Marie. She likes yellow flowers and Christmas movies, even in summer. Tears rolled down her cheeks. She makes hot chocolate with tiny marshmallows shaped like stars. The sound changed pitch, becoming more insistent. Neva's body went rigid in his arms. Keep talking, Seraphim urged, starting the engine again. They needed to move. What else does Elena like? She sings when she cooks and she has a garden. Neva's words were coming faster now, desperate. The bad man came to her garden, said we belonged to them, said the butterfly had chosen us. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the riverbank. For a moment, Seraphim thought he saw figures, standing among the trees, their outlines wrong somehow, too tall and too still. When the darkness returned, the sound had changed again, becoming a complex pattern that made his teeth ache. Neva went limp in his arms. No, no, no. He shook her gently. Stay awake. Elena needs you to stay awake. Her eyes fluttered. Tired. The song makes me tired. I know, but we're going to play a game. He steered the boat around a bend in the river, heart pounding. Every time you hear the butterfly song, you sing a different song louder. Can you do that? She shook her head weakly. Not allowed. They get angry. Let them get angry. Seraphim felt something he hadn't experienced since he was a boy. The wild, reckless defiance that had once made him and Marcus infamous. Sing with me anything you want. When she remained silent, he began to sing himself, his voice rough and untrained. You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. Neva's eyes widened slightly. Mommy sings that. Then sing it with me, loud as you can. The high-pitched sound intensified, as if in response to his challenge, but Neva's small voice joined his, trembling at first, then stronger. You make me happy when skies are grey. The shadows on the riverbank seemed to writhe and the sound became almost painful, but Seraphim kept singing, and Naiva held onto his coat with white-knuckled fingers, her voice rising. "You'll never know, dear, how much I love you." A massive figure stepped out of the trees ahead, impossibly tall, its proportions all wrong. Seraphim's heart nearly stopped. But Naiva's voice grew stronger, and he forced himself to join her for the last line. "Please don't take my sunshine away." The figure reached out with two long arms, but Seraphim had already turned the boat, taking them down a smaller tributary. The high-pitched sound followed, but it seemed weaker now, fighting against the simple melody that Naiva kept singing, over and over. His phone buzzed. "Marcus." "Cabin's ready. But brother, we've got company. Someone's been here recently. Left things behind." Seraphim's blood ran cold. He typed back one-handed, "What things?" The response came quickly. "Drawings. Lots of them. Butterflies mostly. And a woman's handwriting. Same word over and over. Sorry." Naiva had stopped singing. She was staring at him with those two old eyes. "The bad man took Mommy to the butterfly house," she whispered. "But she got away. She left me clues, didn't she? Like our special game." Seraphim thought of Sarah in her final days, filling notebooks with butterfly drawings and whispering about songs only she could hear. He thought of Elena, somehow finding their family cabin, leaving messages for a daughter she had been forced to abandon. The high-pitched sound had faded, but something worse had replaced it, the distant thrum of helicopter blades. "Your mother is very clever," he told Naiva, steering the boat toward a hidden inlet he and Marcus had used as boys. "And so are you. We're going to find her, I promise. But first we need to play another game." "What kind of game?" "Hide and seek," he said grimly, cutting the engine. "And we need to be very, very good at it." The old hunting cabin crouched in the darkness like a wounded animal, its weathered walls barely visible through the rain. Marcus stood in the doorway, his broad silhouette a shadow against the warm light inside. The years of separation melted away as he helped Seraphim carry a sleeping Naiva from the truck they'd switched to after abandoning the boat. "She's so small," Marcus muttered as they laid her on the cabin's ancient couch. His rough mechanic's hands were gentle as he tucked a blanket around her, like Sarah was. Seraphim watched his brother move around the cabin, noting the ways time had changed him. Marcus's dark hair had gone grey at the temples, matching Seraphim's own, and deep lines creased the corners of his eyes. But he still moved with the same purposeful energy that had made him the family's protector in their youth. "Show me what you found," Seraphim said quietly. Marcus led him to the back room, their father's old study. Papers covered every surface, drawings of butterflies in varying sizes, some delicate and precise, others wild and desperate, and beneath them, written in an increasingly unsteady hand, "Sorry, sorry, sorry." "Elena," Seraphim breathed, picking up one of the papers. "Naiva's mother was here recently." Marcus pointed to a coffee cup on the desk, a faint lipstick stain still visible on the rim. "Maybe 2 days ago? But she didn't just leave drawings." He pulled out a leather-bound journal from behind a loose board in the wall, their childhood hiding place. The first page held a single sentence, "To the man who saved my daughter." Seraphim's hands shook slightly as he turned the pages. Eleanor's handwriting filled them, growing more frantic as it went on. "They found us at the garden center where I worked. Said Naiva had been chosen like I was. Showed me their mark, the same one I've carried since childhood. Said she would be part of something greater. When I refused, they took everything. My job, my home, our identities. Said we belong to the project now." "The project?" Marcus growled. "What the hell is that?" Seraphim kept reading. "They use the sound to control us, something about frequency and brain patterns. I didn't understand it all, but I remembered what my mother taught me before they took her too. Songs break their hold. Simple songs, childhood songs. The more emotional connection, the better." The next pages were filled with musical notes and lyrics, dozens of lullabies and children's songs, annotated with Elena's desperate commentary. "This one works best. Naiva loves it. Helps her resist." "Sarah used to sing," Marcus said softly. Near the end, said it kept the butterfly people away. A small sound from the doorway made them both turn. Neva stood there, clutching her borrowed sweater, eyes fixed on the journal in Seraphim's hands. "Mommy's book," she whispered. "She wrote in it every night, said it was our special secret." Seraphim knelt down to her level. "Your mother is very brave, Neva. She left this to help us find her." "The butterfly people took her to the white place." Neva's voice was barely audible. "Where the songs don't work anymore." Before Seraphim could respond, Marcus's security system chirped. Motion sensors in the woods. On the small monitor by the desk, heat signatures moved through the trees. Too many to count. "They're here," Marcus said grimly, reaching for the gun safe hidden behind their father's old fishing trophies. "No." Seraphim stopped him. "Guns won't help against whatever they are." A familiar high-pitched sound began to build outside, but this time it was different, deeper, more complex. Naeva swayed on her feet. "The big song," she whimpered. No, please, not the big song." Seraphim scooped her up as her knees buckled. Her skin was cold, pupils dilated, just like Sarah's had been. "Elena's notes," he snapped at Marcus. "Find something, now." His brother frantically flipped through the journal while Seraphim held Neva, who had begun to tremble violently. The sound was inside his head now, making it hard to think. "Here," Marcus thrust the journal at him. Eleanor wrote, "The strongest protection is love freely given. Remind them they're not alone." Through the window, impossibly tall figures emerged from the trees. The sound built to a crescendo that made Seraphim's vision blur. Neva went rigid in his arms, and then Marcus began to sing, their mother's old lullaby, the one she'd sung to all three of them during storms. His voice was rough with emotion. "Hush now, little one. The storm can't find you here." Seraphim joined in, cradling Neva close. "Safe in loving arms. There's nothing you need fear." The sound outside reached impossible heights, but they kept singing, and slowly, so slowly, Neva's eyes focused again. Her small voice joined theirs, weak but growing stronger. "For I'll be with you, through darkness and through light." The shadows at the windows writhed. The sound became a screech of frustration. "My love will guard you," they sang together, all through the night. And for the first time since Sarah died, the Allard brothers held on to each other, and onto a little girl who had become more precious to them than any empire, while outside, inhuman voices screamed in rage at the power of such a simple thing as love. Dawn broke over the cabin, pale light filtering through windows covered in strange, frost-like patterns despite the warm spring air. The night's confrontation had left its mark, deep scratches in the wooden walls, patches of dead vegetation in perfect circles around the cabin, and a profound silence where birds should have been singing. Seraphim sat at the kitchen table, Elena's journal open before him, while Marcus cleaned and checked his collection of old surveillance equipment. Naeva slept on the couch, still wrapped in Seraphim's sweater, her face peaceful for the first time since he'd found her. "Listen to this," Seraphim said softly, reading from the journal. "They call themselves the Harmony Project. They believe certain people have a natural resonance with their frequencies, children born during specific astronomical alignments. They've been collecting them for decades." Marcus set down the signal detector he'd been calibrating. "Like Sarah. And Elena. And now Neva." Seraphim turned a page covered in hastily scrawled notes. "Eleanor worked in their records department before she escaped. She writes about a facility, the White Place Neva mentioned, a research center disguised as a private hospital in the Berkshires." "Berkshire Hills Wellness Center," Marcus said, making both brothers turn sharply toward Neva's small voice. She stood in the kitchen doorway, eyes clear and focused. "That's where they took Mommy. I saw the sign when the bad man's car drove past." Seraphim exchanged a look with his brother. The Berkshire Hills Wellness Center was one of his own investments, a supposedly cutting-edge medical research facility he'd helped fund 5 years ago. He'd never visited in person, letting his financial advisors handle everything. "I should have known," he said, bile rising in his throat. "Should have looked closer at where my money was going." "This isn't your fault," Marcus growled, "but we can make it right." Niva padded over to the table, climbing into Seraphim's lap without hesitation. The gesture still startled him, this easy trust she placed in him. She reached for Elena's journal, small fingers tracing her mother's handwriting. "Mommy said the butterfly people think they're helping," she whispered. "They want to make everyone hear the same song, so there won't be any more fighting or sadness. But their song hurts." Seraphim held her closer, thinking of Sarah in those final days, crying about the beautiful, terrible music that wouldn't let her sleep. How had he dismissed her fears so easily? Called it stress, depression, anything but what it really was. Marcus's security system chirped again, but this time it was the pattern they'd set up for their own people. A moment later, Mrs. Chen's voice came through the encrypted radio. "Sir, are you there?" Seraphim grabbed the handset. "We're here. Are you safe?" "Yes, but..." she hesitated. "Something's happening with your company. Emergency board meetings, stock prices falling. They're saying you've had a mental breakdown, that you kidnapped a child from protective services. Of course, they were trying to destroy him the legal way first, easier than explaining why their inhuman enforcers had failed to retrieve one small girl." "Mr. Allard?" Mrs. Chen's voice dropped lower. "There's something else. A woman came to my daughter's house looking for you. She was in bad shape, injured, frightened. She said to tell you she remembers the song her mother taught her, the one about butterflies and secrets." Niva's grip on the journal tightened. "Mommy," she breathed, "she got away again." But before they could respond, a new sound cut through the morning quiet. Not the high-pitched frequency of their pursuers, but the distinctive thrum of approaching helicopters. Many of them. Marcus rushed to the window. 3 choppers coming in fast. Not military, private security. Seraphim's mind raced. The Harmony Project was done playing games. They'd use human forces first, trained mercenaries who could operate in daylight, who could be explained away as legitimate security contractors. And when that failed, he looked down at Niva, saw the terror creeping back into her eyes. No, he wouldn't let them take her, wouldn't let them twist her into something inhuman with their frequencies and their twisted vision of harmony. "Mrs. Chen," he snapped into the radio. "The woman, Elena. Tell her to meet us where Sarah used to sing. She'll know what it means." "But sir, your company. Let it burn." He cut her off, surprising himself with how little he cared about the Empire. He'd spent his life building. None of it matters now. The helicopters were visible now, black shapes against the morning sky. Marcus was already moving, grabbing go bags he'd prepared during the night, but Niva stood rooted in place, face upturned, listening to something only she could hear. "They're scared," she whispered. "The butterfly people, they've never lost anyone before, never had anyone. Fight back." A small, fierce smile crossed her face, so much like Sarah's that it made Seraphim's heart ache. "But Mommy did, and now we are too." The first helicopter began its descent, kicking up clouds of dust in the clearing, but Seraphim wasn't watching it. He was watching his brother reach for Naiva's hand, watching her small fingers wrap trustingly around Marcus's calloused ones. Watching the way she looked at them both, not with fear but with the absolute certainty of a child who knew she was loved. And in that moment, Seraphim understood what Elena had written about love, freely given being the strongest protection. Because when the dust cleared and the men with guns approached the cabin, they wouldn't find cowering victims or a broken businessman. They would find the brothers Allard, standing with a little girl between them, ready to tear down heaven and earth to keep her safe. And somewhere in the Berkshires, a mother was fighting her way back to her daughter, armed with nothing but love and a simple song about butterflies and secrets. The helicopter landed. Niva began to sing. The old ironwork stood abandoned in the foothills of the Berkshires, its rusted skeleton reaching toward the afternoon sky. This was where Sarah had come in her final months, singing to the empty buildings, claiming the old metal pipes created perfect harmonies with her songs. They had all thought she was losing her mind. Now Seraphim understood. She had been fighting back the only way she knew how. 3 cars following, Marcus muttered from the driver's seat of their 4th vehicle since morning. A beat-up delivery van he'd kept just in case at one of his garages. But they're holding back, like they're herding us. Seraphim nodded grimly. After their escape from the cabin, through an old mining tunnel Marcus had discovered years ago, they'd been in constant motion. The helicopter teams had seemed almost too easy to evade, making obvious mistakes, pushing them in specific directions. In the back of the van, Neva sat cross-legged on a pile of blankets, Eleanor's journal open in her lap. She hadn't spoken since they'd left the cabin, but her silence felt different now, not fearful but focused. She traced her mother's handwriting with small fingers, mouthing words to herself. "We're walking into a trap," Marcus said, taking another winding turn up the mountain road. "I know." Seraphim checked his phone. Still no signal, which meant the secure message he'd sent to his remaining loyal board members might not have gone through. Not that it mattered now. His company was probably already lost, his reputation destroyed. Strange how little he cared. The van crested a hill, and suddenly the Berkshire Hills Wellness Center came into view. It sprawled across the mountainside, like a white crystal growing from the rock, all sharp angles and gleaming surfaces. Nothing about it looked like a hospital. Neva's head snapped up. "The white place," she whispered. "It's singing." Seraphim couldn't hear anything yet, but he saw Marcus's hands tighten on the steering wheel. His brother had always been more sensitive to the frequencies, like Sarah had been. They pulled into an overlook, the van's engine ticking as it cooled. The following cars stayed on the main road, continuing toward the facility's main entrance, still herding them. "Sarah used to talk about the pipes," Marcus said suddenly, pulling out a map he'd drawn from Elena's descriptions. "Said they made the bad songs turn into good ones." "Resonance," Seraphim murmured, remembering physics classes from long ago. "The ironworks' old pipes. Their natural frequencies could interfere with the project's signals." "Like when we sing," Neva added softly. "It makes their song get all tangled up." A new sound reached them then. Not the high-pitched frequencies of before, but deeper, more mechanical. The facility's walls were moving, panels sliding open to reveal arrays of sophisticated equipment. Speaker systems, Seraphim realized, but designed for something very different from normal sound. His phone buzzed, 1 bar of signal. A message from Mrs. Chen. "Elena says the ironworks, sub-level 3, hurry." "She made it," he breathed. "She's really here." Neva stood up in the van, pressing her hands against the window. "Mommy," she whispered. "I can hear her singing." And then they all heard it, faint but clear. A woman's voice carried on the wind singing the butterfly song. But not like Neva sang it. This version was different, defiant. "Ring around the butterfly, secrets that we now deny. When the darkness comes to play, we will make the truth display." The facility's speakers crackled to life, trying to drown out the song with their frequencies. But something was wrong with their sound. It wavered, distorted by the metal pipes of the ironworks. "Below." "They're scrambling," Marcus said, a fierce grin spreading across his face. "Eleanor's using the pipes like Sarah did, disrupting their whole system." More vehicles were approaching now, sleek black SUVs carrying men in tactical gear, but they moved uncertainly, some of them staggering as the conflicting frequencies battled in the air. "We need to get to sub-level 3, Seraphim said, studying the facility's layout in Elena's journal. "But they'll be expecting that. We need a distraction?" Marcus's grin turned wolfish. "Good thing I brought some of my old toys." He popped open a hidden compartment under the van's floor, revealing an array of signal jammers and electromagnetic pulse devices, remnants of the brothers' wilder years. "The butterfly people don't like it when their songs get mixed up," Neva said, and there was something new in her voice, not just defiance, but understanding. "When different songs play together, it makes them weak. That's why they want everyone to hear the same thing." Seraphim looked at his brother, then at this small, fierce child who had changed everything. "Then let's give them a symphony they'll never forget." Marcus began distributing the jammers, showing Seraphim how to set their frequencies. But Neva stopped them, her face suddenly serious. "Wait," she said. "Listen." Through the chaotic mix of frequencies and Elena's distant singing, another sound emerged. A simple melody, played on what sounded like an old music box. Sarah's melody. Neva's eyes went wide. "There's more," she whispered. "More like us, in the white place, all singing different songs." The facility speakers screeched, trying to impose their harmony. But it was too late. The revolution had already begun, led by a mother's love, a child's courage, and the forgotten songs of countless others who had refused to surrender their unique music to the project's forced harmony. Thunder rolled across the mountains, though the sky was clear. The white walls of the facility seemed to shimmer like a mirage, and in the back of the van, Neva began to sing a new song, one that had never been heard before, but somehow contained echoes of every melody that had ever defied the butterfly, people's cruel harmony. The descent into the ironworks felt like entering another world. Emergency lights cast red shadows across rusted machinery as Seraphim led the way, Neva held securely in his arms, while Marcus covered their rear. The brothers moved with the synchronization of their youth when they'd explored these same mountains together, before money and ambition had driven them apart. The facility's frequencies grew distorted here, bouncing off metal surfaces, creating interference patterns that made the air itself seem to shimmer. But beneath it all, Elena's voice grew stronger, joined now by others. Different songs in different languages, all fighting back against the project's enforced harmony. "Sub-level 3, Marcus muttered, checking Elena's hastily drawn map. "Should be just ahead." They reached a junction of large pipes, their surfaces covered in decades of rust. Neva suddenly squirmed in Seraphim's arms, pointing to markings scratched into the metal, butterflies, dozens of them, surrounding a single musical note. "Mommy's sign," she whispered. "She leaves them for me to follow." A crash echoed from above, the tactical teams entering the ironworks. But they seemed disoriented, their coordinated movements disrupted by the competing frequencies. Some stumbled, holding their heads, while others stopped completely, caught in the conflicting waves of sound. The pipes, Seraphim realized. They're not just disrupting the project's signals, they're amplifying the counter-songs. They followed Elena's markers deeper into the complex. The air grew thick with competing vibrations, making Seraphim's teeth ache, but Neva seemed to grow, stronger, more alert, as if drawing energy from the chaos of sounds. They found Elena in a circular chamber, filled with old pressure vessels. She stood at its center, singing into the pipes, her voice multiplied and transformed by the metal around her. When she saw Neva, her song faltered for just a moment, but she didn't stop, couldn't stop. Her face was gaunt, marked with exhaustion and healing bruises, but her eyes blazed with fierce determination. "Keep singing," Neva said, wiggling free from Seraphim's arms. "I know what to do now." She walked to the center of the chamber, her small voice joining her mother's. But she didn't sing the same song. Instead, she began a counterpoint, weaving a new melody through Elena's. The pipes around them hummed in response, adding their own harmonics to the mix. Above them, the facility's speakers screeched in protest. The project was trying to reassert control, to drown out these rebel songs with their perfect, sterile harmony. But in this place, surrounded by metal that had been singing its own songs for decades, their power was fracturing. Then Marcus joined in, adding the old lullaby their mother had sung. Seraphim found himself humming along, remembering nights when they were children, all huddled together during storms. Other voices echoed through the pipes, more escapees from the project, hidden in different parts of the ironworks, each adding their own unique melodies to the growing symphony of resistance. The tactical teams had reached their level now, but as they entered the chamber, weapons raised, something strange happened. The competing frequencies reached a critical point, creating standing waves that made the very air vibrate. The men staggered, their equipment shorting out in bursts of sparks. And then, cutting through everything, came a sound Seraphim had never thought to hear again. Sarah's music box melody, played on actual metal chimes somewhere in the complex. The simple tune wove through all the others, binding them together not in forced harmony, but in a complex tapestry of individual voices. The facility's speakers gave one final shriek before falling silent. In the sudden quiet, Elena finally turned from the pipes. She looked at Neva, tears streaming down her face, arms open. "My brave girl," she whispered. "My beautiful, brave girl." Neva ran to her mother, their embrace fierce and desperate. Elena looked over her daughter's head at Seraphim, her eyes full of gratitude and something else, understanding. She had seen the same truth he had, that sometimes the greatest acts of love came from those who had forgotten how to love at all. But their victory celebration was premature. A new sound began to build, deeper than before, more primal. The project's last resort, perhaps, or something worse. "They're coming themselves now," Neva said, her voice muffled in her mother's embrace. "The real butterfly people." The shadows in the corridor began to shift and stretch, taking on those wrong, too tall shapes they'd seen at the cabin. The temperature dropped suddenly, frost forming on the pipes. Elena held Neva tighter. "We can't fight them directly. No one ever has." But Seraphim looked at his brother, saw the same fierce determination he felt. "No one ever tried fighting them with family," he said quietly. The first of the butterfly people stepped into the chamber, its form seeming to flicker between human and something else entirely. But its song, its terrible, beautiful song of perfect harmony, died in the chaos of their combined melodies. And in that moment, surrounded by those he loved, Seraphim finally understood what they were really fighting for. Not just survival, but the right to be gloriously, defiantly imperfect, to sing their own songs even if they clashed, to love in ways that transformed them. The butterfly person reached for Neva with two long fingers. The battle for harmony was about to begin. The butterfly person's elongated fingers stopped inches from Neva's face, trapped in the web of competing songs that filled the chamber. Its form wavered like heat shimmer, trying to maintain coherence in the chaos of sound. Behind it, more of its kind crowded the doorway, their impossible shapes bleeding into one another. "Their harmony," Elena gasped, still holding Neva tight. "It's what gives them form in our world. Without it..." As if proving her point, the creature's outline fractured where Sarah's music box melody cut through it. It made a sound like breaking crystal, retreating a step. But others pressed forward, their combined frequencies building into something that made Seraphim's bones vibrate. Marcus staggered, always more sensitive to their songs. "They're trying to synchronize. If they lock their frequencies together..." "No." Neva's voice rang out clear and strong. She stepped away from her mother, facing the butterfly people without fear. "You forgot something important. You forgot about love." She began to sing, not the butterfly song they'd taught her, but a new one, created from pieces of every melody she'd ever heard. Sarah's music box tune wrapped around Elena's lullabies, harmonized with Marcus's childhood songs, even incorporated the deep resonance of the ironworks pipes themselves. The butterfly people's forms wavered more violently. One of them reached for her with a sound like tearing silk, but Elena stepped forward, adding her voice to her daughter's. The creature's arm passed through empty air where Neva had been, its frequencies disrupted by the love between mother and child. "That's it," Seraphim breathed, understanding flooding him. "They can only touch what they can control, and they can't control what they don't understand." He joined the song, his untrained voice carrying all the years of regret for Sarah, all the newfound love for this brave little girl who had awakened his humanity. Marcus's deeper tones followed, bringing memories of childhood protection, of brotherhood stronger than any corporate empire. The butterfly people's synchronized frequencies shattered against this wall of genuine emotion. Their forms began to break apart, revealing glimpses of something else behind them. Machinery, cameras, men in white coats frantically adjusting equipment, the project's human masters hidden behind their otherworldly puppets. But Seraphim barely noticed them. He was watching Neva, who stood at the heart of their musical storm, conducting their separate songs into something new and powerful. She was crying but smiling too, glowing with a fierce joy that transformed her from victim to victor. The remaining butterfly people pressed forward in one last assault, their combined song building to impossible heights. Frost crept across. The floor metal groaned, and for a moment it seemed their harmony would overwhelm the humans' imperfect chorus. Then a new voice joined them, thin and reedy, played through old speakers somewhere in the complex. A recording of Sarah, singing the same song they'd dismissed as madness in her final days. Her voice, preserved by someone in the project who'd recognized its power, now returned to protect her family. The butterfly people's forms imploded, their frequencies collapsing in on themselves. Behind them, alarms blared as the facility's equipment overloaded, decades of carefully maintained harmonics destroyed by the simple power of love and memory. But in the chaos of their victory, Seraphim saw something that made his blood run cold. One last butterfly person, smaller than the others, crouched in the shadows. Its form was more stable, as if it had found some way to exist without the project's harmony. And it was reaching for Naeva with hands that looked almost human. Elena saw it too. Her eyes went wide with recognition and horror. "No," she whispered, "not you. You were supposed to be dead." The creature lifted its head, its features resolving into something that might once have been a woman's face. When it spoke, its voice carried echoes of Eleanor's butterfly song. "My dear Elena," it said softly, "did you really think we'd let any of our chosen ones truly escape?" And before anyone could react, it grabbed Naeva with impossible speed, its form solidifying as it drew on some hidden reservoir of harmony. The temperature plunged, frost spreading across the pipes that had been their salvation. The last butterfly. Person, the first butterfly person, spread its crystalline wings, taking Naeva with it into a darkness that should not have existed in our world. Elena screamed, a sound of such pure anguish that it made the metal around them shriek in sympathy. But Seraphim and Marcus were already moving, following the creature into that impossible darkness, guided by Naeva's voice as she sang through her terror, not in fear, but in defiance. She was an Allard now too, after all. And Allards never surrendered what they loved. The darkness beyond the ironworks chamber defied physics, swallowing light and sound alike. But Seraphim could still hear Naeva singing, her voice leading them deeper into this impossible space. Eleanor ran beside him, Marcus at their backs, all of them following that small, brave voice that refused to be silenced. The butterfly woman's form flickered ahead of them, becoming more human with each step. As the darkness thinned, Seraphim finally saw her clearly, an elderly woman in a white coat, her silver hair swept up in an elegant bun. Only her eyes betrayed her inhumanity, reflecting light that wasn't there. "Dr. Grace," Elena breathed. "My mother's friend, the one who promised to help us escape." "I did help you escape," the woman said, her voice carrying harmonic undertones that made the air vibrate. "I helped all of you escape the chaos of individual existence, the messy, painful discord of human emotion." She stroked Naeva's hair with something like tenderness. "I've spent 50 years perfecting the harmony, 50 years since I first heard their songs, their beautiful frequencies that could make humanity finally work in perfect synchronization." "You mean control them," Seraphim said, his mind racing. "Turn them into puppets for your perfect world." Dr. Grace smiled, and for a moment her teeth looked crystalline. "Control is harmony, Mr. Allard. Why do you think your sister was so special?" "To us?" Her natural resonance was extraordinary. "She could have helped us bridge the gap, bring their harmony fully into our world. But she fought us, like Elena did, like this precious child does." Naeva squirmed in her grip, still singing. The darkness around them rippled in response, and for a moment Seraphim glimpsed what lay behind it. A vast chamber filled with crystalline structures, humming with alien frequencies. The source of it all. "Let her go," Marcus growled, taking a step forward. But Dr. Grace's form flickered, becoming something taller, sharper. "Stay back," she warned. "I've lived in both harmonies for so long, I can tear her apart at the molecular level with a single frequency." But Eleanor was shaking, her head, tears streaming down her face. "No," she said softly. "You can't because you made a mistake, Doctor. The same mistake they made. You forgot about love." She began to sing, not in defiance this time, but with compassion. It was a lullaby, simple and ancient, the same one, Seraphim, realized that Dr. Grace's own mother must have sung to her long ago before she heard the butterfly people's songs. The doctor's form wavered. "Stop that," she hissed, but her grip on Niva loosened. Marcus joined the lullaby, then Seraphim, their voices carrying memories of childhood comfort, of family bonds that transcended time and distance. And Naiva, brilliant Naiva, wove their song into her own melody, creating something that was neither harmony nor discord, but a celebration of both. Dr. Grace's human features began to crack, revealing the crystalline structure beneath. "You don't understand," she pleaded. "Their harmony is perfect. It could end all conflict, all suffering." "No," Naiva said, finally pulling free. "It just makes everyone the same. And that's not love. Love is choosing someone even when their song is different from yours." The chamber's alien harmonics went haywire. The crystalline structures began to resonate with their human songs, picking up emotional frequencies they were never designed to channel. Dr. Grace screamed as her form started to dissolve, 50 years of perfect harmony shattering under the weight of simple human love. "Run!" Elena grabbed Naiva, pulling her back toward the ironworks. The brothers followed as reality began to collapse behind them, the butterfly people's dimension falling apart without Dr. Grace's hybrid frequencies to maintain it. They burst back into the chamber of pipes just as a thunderous crack echoed through the facility. The remaining project staff were fleeing, their life's work disintegrating as the alien harmonics failed. Years of research, of forced perfection, destroyed by a family's imperfect love. In the silence that followed, Elena held Naiva close, both of them crying and laughing at once. Marcus clapped Seraphim's shoulder, their old connection restored and strengthened by what they'd faced together. And Seraphim finally understood what Sarah had tried to tell them all those years. Some songs weren't meant to be perfect. Some harmonies couldn't be forced. The most beautiful music came from the heart, messy and real and full of emotion that no frequency could ever replicate. Months later, the Berkshire Hills Wellness Center was gone, demolished and replaced by a music therapy center run by Elena. Children came from all over to heal through song, through the simple act of expressing their unique voices. Seraphim had used what remained of his fortune to fund it, finding more satisfaction in this than he ever had in corporate takeovers. The butterfly people never returned. Perhaps they had never truly existed in our dimension, reaching through, only by Dr. Grace's twisted frequencies, but their mark remained on Naiva's neck, no longer a brand of control, but a reminder of the power of resistance, of family, of love. On quiet evenings, you could still hear singing from the old ironworks. Elena and Naiva's voices, joined by Seraphim and Marcus, creating harmonies that were beautifully, perfectly imperfect. And somewhere, in whatever peace lies beyond our world, Sarah sang with them, her song finally, truly free. The mark on Naiva's neck had faded to a simple scar, but she never tried to hide it. "It's my butterfly," she would say, smiling her mother's smile. "It reminds me that even when the dark tries to make everyone the same, love helps us stay who we really are." Seraphim kept Elena's journal in his study, its pages filled with the story of their impossible victory. But his favorite part wasn't the explanation of frequencies or the details of the project's fall. It was the last page where Naiva had written in her childish hand, "Ring around the butterfly. Now we sing our lullaby. When the darkness comes to stay, love will light the way.